You're listening to The People's Pitch, the official podcast of Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by Football Stadium Prince. Let's start the show.
And as I talked about just a couple minutes ago, as Joe Watt stands over this one, he appears to be the one taking the penalty here. This is a huge confidence booster if you're Duluth.
Worst case scenario for City right here.
And it stopped!
Yes!
And it stopped!
Totally redeems himself.
Matt Elder redeeming himself. Oliver with the right foot. The shot is goal!
Oliver!
Justin Oliver will break the scoreless tie. And it is 1-0 Minneapolis City. It's Hutton now on the offense with the left foot. It is now 2-0 Minneapolis City.
Good finish.
Nick Hutton taking his quick victory lap.
Hey there, soccer fans. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club. I'm your host, John, and alongside me, as always, is my partner in crime, the Nate Morales. Nate, we had a brief hiccup with recording this week due to all the smoke coming this way via Detroit. Has all your equipment aired out so far? You good to go?
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing I'm not going to pretend like I understand, it's the rivalry that Detroit City has with almost every other club in the country.
Especially the Michigan Stars.
Especially the Michigan Stars, right? But what I do understand, well, I will always understand the language of smoke, man. And there was a lot of freaking smoke at that match. That was those were some really cool shots to see.
You know, when you talk about the textbook definition of butthurt, I think that whole situation was it. Like, if you flip open a dictionary and you look at butthurt, it's that, like, we apologize for our performance due to the smoke in Detroit. It's like, dude, are you serious? Like, every team that goes there knows what happens when you get scored on. And when we played there, like, I remember talking to to some of the guys, and they're like, I knew that AO was over to my right, but I couldn't see him, so I just kicked the ball and hoped he got it. That's what happens here. And like, when you're there in the environment, you just got scored on as an opponent, and you're like, God damn it. But then you're still like, man, this is pretty cool. And I'm really interested in seeing an MLS team come in there and play in that environment in the Open Cup. Like, it's one of the things I'm really looking forward to in the next round of the Open Cup.
Yes, so that's what's going to be on the calendar, huh? Is MLS
they get
mystery
Atlanta.
MLS match? Oh, they get Atlanta?
They get Atlanta, yeah. And they can't get Atlanta 2 either, because Atlanta 2, I believe, is in the Open Cup as well, which is another stupid thing we never talked about, on how, like, the reserve squads are if they're playing in a different league than MLS Next, I believe, are allowed to be in the tournament. That seems weird. Like, you don't. I think it was Sonny from Tulsa who tweeted out, like, yeah, it's super exciting to see Liverpool 2 take on West Ham in the FA Cup. Like,
no kidding.
Like, it doesn't happen anywhere else where reserve squads are playing. But anyway, so yeah, the full Atlanta squad I believe is going to be the one going to Keyworth. So that's definitely one I'm gonna, that one, and obviously the matchup between Madison and Minnesota United, which would have been something that we maybe got a shot at if we would have continued to ride a hot streak.
That would have been a few teams to get through before we got. I mean, shit, we would have had to beat Union, then we would have had to beat Madison, and then maybe United. That would have been tough.
It would have been cool to see Minnesota United have to play at Benelli.
That would be cool.
This beautiful landmark of a stadium, just moments away from this like mid-level Division III college stadium. Yep. Like the locker room. I can only imagine the pros going into that locker room. But anyways, enough about that. Let's talk about the show this week.
Yeah, well, so we got a lot to talk about today. Those player signings, they keep rolling in, and we're going to talk about quite a few new players who Minneapolis City has announced. And then we're welcoming the Crows' new NPSL head coach, Marco Campoverde, to the show. Very excited to hear his plans for inheriting one of the top teams in the NPSL and his take on what success is going to look like this year. So let's get to it, John.
A lot of new today.
A lot of new. That's right. So like I said, the player announcements, they've been coming in fast and furious over the last week, and many City fans are going to recognize a lot of these names. But if you're a more casual fan, or maybe you've only been a fan for 1 or 2 years, maybe didn't follow MC2 that much, there's a lot of guys to catch up on, a lot of opportunity to learn something new tonight. Plus, there's a few brand new names, right, John?
Yeah, absolutely. The first one we're kicking off with is brand new, and that's Miguel Arellano. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I'm terrible at pronunciations, but Miguel is a dynamic winger. He most recently played with Granite City, which we saw take Minneapolis City 2 to the death in whatever that weird UPSL league playoff thing was last year that went into double overtime. But tall, fast, outside attacking player, but can play a little bit inside. I would basically say he reminds me a lot of Will Kidd, to be honest. Like he gets himself in. I think like no one can be Will Kidd on the defensive side of the ball from an attacker perspective, but when it comes to the attacking side of things, very, very similar to what you saw from Will Kidd, looking to get into dangerous spots, maybe get taken down with the famous Will Kidd chop that he used to do to get penalties. But also like being able to find the net, and like when the ball's in the attacking third, like he has his eye for get in spaces that are advantageous in front of the goal. And also he came to us via the open trial with another former Granite City Rock in Hakeem Senna. So another open trialist who did his job in trials and performed well in kind of the preferred trial environment once he got elevated from the open trial, and happy to have him.
Wow.
Next, Martin Sanchez, adding a goalkeeper to the goalkeeper room, which I know you talked about last week in the Open Cup recap on, some folks were maybe a little down on Troy, and I put that worry to bed that Troy's going to be just fine. But I had talked about how we are going to be having other goalkeepers coming in because, as when we talked to Marco a little bit later here, there's going to be multiple teams going in multiple directions. So Troy can't be split in half.
For sure.
So Martin Sanchez, he was the top man on a very strong Northern Illinois squad that saw the Sweet 16 in the NCAAs last season, was actually a member of our U23 squad 2 years ago before leaving the nest and playing in the USL2 for a team in Colorado before deciding to come home this year. So has that USL2 experience. Not as tall as Troy, super quick, athletic, and very, very good with his feet. So I think that's something that we haven't really had. No disrespect to Troy or to Mitch or to Matt or Big Game James, any of the goalkeepers we've had in the past, outside of Jeremy Clark, who we had in, who that one game he played in against Sioux Falls, I think he probably touched the ball 150 times because we were pressed so high and they were just sitting back. But Martin is very, very good with his feet. So you're gonna see him outside of his box when we can actually use that as an advantage against the opponent.
The NPSL's Ederson.
I mean, sure.
So good with his feet. No, well, let's see let's see first. Morales, slow down.
Yeah, easy, pal. Next, we have Eli Goldman. This man really needs no introduction to City fans, diehard or casual. Back for his third year with the club, and fingers crossed will be in healthy form from the jump this year. He's seen some injury limit his time until kind of being like a free agent signing in the back half of seasons, which has been awesome, to be honest with you, for the past 2 seasons. But this year, we should see him get that opportunity to come in, fingers crossed, fully healthy. And I look for him outside of Minneapolis City. Like, this is the year where he gets his opportunity at University of New Hampshire, which was a top club in the NCAA last year. But super happy to have him back in the middle on the field. His attacking prowess is next to none that we've had in from that midfield perspective, throughout the years. So be on look out for him also celebrating other goal scorers' celebrations, as we found out that he likes to do that last year. So I'm going to be really paying attention to him up in the booth after we score goals to see if he's celebrating the celebration again. Next up, we have Bernard Acevi Rule, So the former UW Green Bay attacker and former U23 squad member making his way back, like Martin Sanchez, left last summer to play in the USL 2, someplace in Texas, which the summers in Texas don't seem very appealing to me. But played there. Dangerous outside player. And I think the common theme you're going to see with this group that we're talking about, very heavy on attackers, which you can never have too many people to put the ball in the goal. But really happy to have Bernard back. He's using, I believe he's using his extra year of eligibility now that he's graduated from Green Bay to go on a 2-year grad school program, I think in Alabama. A Division I school in Alabama. The name escapes me, but he's going to be going back to school after this summer. But awesome to have Bernard back in. Next up, we have Wes Lawrence, the lone Stegman's Academy product still left in the club. So don't have too many of those left as the players are starting to move out. The Southern boy from Georgia by way of the IMG Academy and Virginia Military Institute, now with transferring to St. Thomas. So another Tommy going to be involved. I kind of equate Wes as like the backline Swiss Army knife.
Okay.
But, he has that never quit attitude that you want from like an outside defender, but he has the size and the aerial ability of a central defender. Really was an MC2 stalwart in the beginning of the year. Then he got hurt. And then when he was hurt, he kind of shut it down to prepare for school. Then he brought his dog to a game, and now his dog's more famous than he is. So it's we're happy to have Wes and his dog back in for another season. The next up is another brand new player. That's Xavier Zenge. Really fun to say. A really, really fun name to say. Xavier goes to the University of Dayton, is a defender, has the size to play in the middle, but also has that pace to play out wide as well as, what I mentioned with Wes. So kind of that versatility to be able to do both, to try to maybe fill the defender room with some more versatile type players, depending on what you need, or if someone goes down with injury, having that ability to have people that can play multiple positions across the back line is super important. And Xavier's another one of those. I believe he was on Joy's roster last summer, but did not feature. And he came to us via the winter invite trials. So he was a referral player that came in and really locked on to an opportunity to gain a spot. I think he's kind of a do-it-all defender, 1v1, aerial balls, good with his feet, line-breaking passes, has that mess you up in a tackle style of play. Like, you're going to really like him going into tackles. And he's a big dude, so it's going to hurt for some guys. But happy to have Xavier in. And then we start getting into a couple more names that you're probably a little more familiar with. Your guy, Nate, Nathan Streets, the Mean Streets.
That's right.
Who came to us from the Futures program last season to get promoted into MC2, and then really never looked back, really took his spot on Prunty's side. More of your traditional outside back, though. He can get forward, but I think his bread and butter is in staying more connected to his central partners, really holding that defensive line and locking down attackers. And he's currently in his third year out west at Division III Power Occidental College in California.
Oxy's a D3 school. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I believe they are for soccer. I could be wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of things.
It's a beautiful campus.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of smart kids around there. Yeah, we'll have to get our the fact checker that we don't have the budget for to double check my thoughts on that.
Stat boy.
Yeah, hey Stat boy, is Occidental College? Hey Siri, is Occidental College a Division III soccer program? I'm surprised my watch didn't pick that up actually. But anyways, super happy to have the Mean Streets back. The next person, it seems like he's been around for a decade. That's Nils Gilbronson. Nils came to us fresh out of high school 3 years ago as the state's leading goal scorer in high school, scoring 41 goals his senior year at Chisago Lakes, not Chicago Lakes, as I found out. It's Chisago Lakes.
Chisago. That's kind of over there. That's up past Stillwater.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, honestly, that it makes a little sense when you're scoring 41 goals in a high school career in your senior season when it's in Chisago Lakes, not Chicago Lakes. But anyways, Nils can find the back of the net. He spent 2 years on the U23 team, and last year was with MC2 before getting injured and shutting it down before the summer, going back to Francis Marion College in South Carolina. Just a huge human.
How is Francis?
Francis or Francis Marion?
She's a lovely woman.
Yeah, Francis and Marion, both of them. But Nils is just a huge human being, and at his size has pace. So it's like for those of you who are familiar with Nick Hutton, if you could like take like a third of Nick Hutton's like world-class track speed, but give him like a superhuman sized body and still be that fast, that's what you get with Nils. But like with that size and his pace, he really adds something that others in our attacking room don't have. And just like he just wreaks havoc because of his stature. And I think that, he's maybe that guy who, I mean, he can go a full 90 for you, but, in a situational perspective, having that in your toolbox to be able to throw in when you got a tired set of defenders and you're like, oh my God, look at this thing they're putting in against me. Like, I think he really does offer that's something that the other group guys in the group don't have. We don't have a lot of height.
No, we in general don't. I remember you saying that like almost everyone on that Des Moines team was taller than us, but also like I can't remember the last time we had an attacker that
was like 6+.
No, exactly, if at all.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I do. When we played
Connor Stevenson.
Connor Stevenson was about 6 foot, but when we played in Sioux Falls and we only had one sub, and I was coaching the team that day when we had to put Big Game James in up top. So
that doesn't count.
It counts. It counts. He almost got on the end of a through ball, which would have been. I'm pretty sure that the rest of the defense would have caught up with James. No disrespect, James, but you are not a fast human being. But anyways, super happy to have Nils back. The next name, another one that the casual supporter might not know, but if you followed MC2 last year, Jacek Nikowski, another futures call up late in the season for MC2, and just kind of really took a hold of that opportunity, much like the Mean Streets. Found the back of the net almost immediately, and I think he scored a hat trick in his first game, and he scored 3 game winners in the 6 matches he played in. So yeah, he can score goals.
He's so also good.
He's also the Wisconsin high school all-time goal scoring leader in a career. So I mean, there's that as well. He's going to be entering his second season at St. Thomas, so another Tommy in the mix. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. You saw more MC2 games live than I did. If you have anything else you want to add to that.
No, he was just electric. Whenever you would put Jacek in, it was, I mean, we've had the pleasure to see Zach Susi a little bit more, but I would say they're a couple comparable players, like really, really dynamic on the ball, and something amazing always happens. I think Jacek is just a little more dangerous when he does find himself in that space.
Yeah, he's like he's one of those type of players where, over the course of a game, when it starts to grow a little bit into the game, when the ball goes in his general direction, people kind of get out of their seats. They kind of stand up. Like,
ooh, that's a good way to put it.
Something might happen here. That kind of player.
Yep, exactly.
Up next, we got Stevie Lamar, the former Creighton man who now is with St. Thomas. So once again, man, they're probably lucky we're around. With all these players that play with us and then end up transferring there. Standout high school career for both school and club with Minneapolis United. Was briefly with Joy last summer to begin the summer, but asked for his switch to Minneapolis City. That was a whole big thing. But ended up moving over to City. Was injured and only was able to play in 1 game versus Joy, whom he scored against. So
I had no idea that he started the season with Joy.
He didn't actually play with them. I think he went to some trainings and just the environment wasn't what he was looking for. And had some people over at City that he knew, and the connections kind of came that way.
Yeah.
But ironically, he featured in 1 game last year against the team he was with and scored a goal. Even though he lost that game, he still scored. But very smart soccer player. He's constantly that out thinker with the person that's marking him. Like definitely plays the chess match as an attacker. Really calm on the ball, comfortable finding the back of the net from anywhere really within 30 yards. Like has the ability to score from out wide. Can score, can kind of break guys down 1v1. I wouldn't say he's as like electric of an attacker, but just like always in the right place at the right time. So super happy to have CD back, and he's healthy now, which is good. And he's motivated because he's found a home now in St. Thomas. And he's back in the area. So super happy to have him back for a second season. And then finally, the last new addition, another common theme on multiple fronts, a former Joy player, another attacker, not at St. Thomas. It would have been the trifecta there if he was. But played all last season in the NPSL with Joy, going into a senior season at UW Milwaukee, so a little close to my heart there. Also played with Bavarians for a little bit, so lots in common with Abdu Ragassi. He featured for my Panthers ever since he set foot on campus and scored some really big goals for the Horizon League champions. On the slider side, we're talking about some of the other guys that have a little more size, and like Miguel or Nils or even Stevie's got some size, but a little bit on the slighter end of the scale than most of our attackers. But with that comes lightning quickness, knack for hunting down balls in spaces, beating guys in foot races. Very similar to what you might find out of like a Justin Oliver, minus the Oliver stuff. If you pick up what I'm putting down here.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But always finding where the ball's either is or going to be in and around the box, willing to set up people or bury a shot himself. So I guess as we come to the conclusion here, a goalkeeper, a couple defenders, and a whole slew of guys who can score goals, which even though we scored a lot of goals, it's we've racked up like those 5, 6, 7 spots against some of the lesser teams in the NPSL. But as we're getting into the USL2 and we talk about needing to split things up with the NPSL, having more people who can score goals, Bernard, who I didn't mention, we talked about Herbert last week, kind of an embarrassment of riches. So it's going to be really on the coaching staff to figure out how do we get all these guys their minutes so that they can catch those hot streaks and we can start pumping in even more goals.
Yeah, that's the thing we do not want to be missing, right? As we go from league to league, there's only 2 guys that can score goals on the entire roster, and sorry, they're in Thunder Bay this week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're playing Duluth and we need to score goals, and then our main goal scorers there. Plus, you're talking about you got Lionel, Midu, Nick Hutton. Who else have we announced that's on the attacking side of things? I mean, it's actually nice that we actually have forwards.
Yeah. Like you said, in the past, that was kind of the gap that we were missing those dynamic, dangerous attackers. And now it's that's now the coin is flipped and we've got a lot of those, and now we're just hoping for some defensive depth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of weird to have that problem. I mean, remember when we had Brandon McGarity and we're like, yes, we have our goal scorer. Then he got hurt. We're like, oh shit, we need to figure this out now. But yeah, no, it's super happy to have all these guys in, and I think we can start seeing now the player pool for the senior side is starting to take some shape. There's a couple more players that we have announced and we haven't put on this list yet that we'll definitely get to, and I think it's time we bring a player on. I don't know about you.
Yeah,
we're announcing all these guys. It might be good to get some voices of the players on and start talking about how things are going to be working out. But before we do that, we're gonna be talking here in a moment to someone who's going to be trying to figure out how to put all those pieces together.
All right, up next, we're really excited to welcome our new NPSL head coach, Marco Campoverde. Marco, welcome to the People's Pitch, man. It sounds like, just talking a little bit before we hit record, it sounds like you've heard the podcast a couple times, which is more than we could say for some of our players sometimes when they come on the show. So appreciate that, and it's really exciting to have you on so we can introduce you to the listenership and the fans in general.
Oh, absolutely. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can get into.
First and foremost, congratulations on your new appointment. I heard you're now the girls' head coach at Lakeville North.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, super excited. Tremendous program, and really, really hopeful to do some great things over there. But yeah, what a great sporting community to be a part of. So thank you.
Yeah, a lot of great soccer going on down in Lakeville.
Oh, I mean, absolutely, right? They've done some great things on the boys and the girls side, and we've produced players within Minneapolis City that have come from that community recently, that have done some really great things, and definitely some future kids that we're looking for to do big things in the future. So that's awesome.
Well, what we like to do with our guests, especially first time guests, is by way of introducing you to the fans. We like you to talk a little bit about yourself, talk a little bit about your soccer journey, and by that we mean when did you start playing? Where did you play growing up? Where did you play in college, if you did, and kind of how you came to be a coach eventually.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Mine is probably a little bit different than most, just because my background is, not super common that you would find in this area of the world. So my mom is actually born and raised in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. And she grew up on a farm, if you can believe that. But my dad is from Cuenca, Ecuador, and he was the big soccer guy that got me involved in it from a really early age. So my dad actually played a little bit of professional soccer in Ecuador as a teenager before coming to the United States to be a place kicker, actually, for an American football team. And he met my mom in college, and the rest is history. My older brother and I became people, and from there, my dad, he never really stopped loving the game, and he went on. He coached collegiately. He coached actually with Dakota Fusion, who's a partner member in NPSL North. Their first year prior to them joining the NPSL. So he was definitely the person that got me hooked into soccer. And, I grew up doing kind of the youth scene. I grew up in Grand Forks, North Dakota. Definitely a lot different. The opportunities weren't as competitive as, people in the Twin Cities. And I had to travel a lot to seek more competitive opportunities for myself. Was, really fortunate to be successful at a prep level. But again, North Dakota is far less competitive than even Minnesota. So, kind of tapped into the fact that my dad had a lot of connections and a lot of background. And the unique thing for me is that my dad spent a large portion of his career as a teacher. So he would have summers off, and he'd actually take my brother and I to Ecuador.
Oh, nice.
And I can,
Sweet.
Yeah, I can definitely say that's where I fell in love with the game, So I had been going to watch professional games since I was 5, playing pickup with super highly skilled players from a super young age. And, I kind of caught the soccer bug that way.
Nice.
So what
you
American football
go ahead.
team? What American football team did your dad come to place kick for?
Yeah, it's so crazy how this worked, because he was actually playing in a soccer match in Cuenca, and there was a guy there that worked at the University of Minnesota Crookston.
Okay.
And he talked to him about coming to the States, and my dad had these illusions as a teenager in Ecuador of like, I'm gonna go to America and get rich, and all of these crazy things. So my dad basically put his few belongings in a suitcase and had $100 bill, and he showed up to be a place kicker. No English, no nothing, and just kind of made his way. So it's a kind of a crazy story if you think about it.
Wow.
So did he keep playing soccer then while he was in Minnesota, or what was it just like there was this kind of like the shift, like now I'm an American football player?
Yeah, so he definitely, I mean, he was a natural, right? Because he could kick a ball. And this was a time where they were definitely making that shift in place kickers being the soccer style type kickers. So he had this weird role where he would, kick and punt, and he didn't even know all the rules. He hadn't seen an American football before he came to the States. They were just like, yeah, we'll pay for you to go to school. you can get a good job once you get an education and all this stuff. And he tells me these stories about like watching Sesame Street at night while he's trying to attend these college classes, not knowing any English, or like how much anxiety he had ordering a pizza for the first time on the phone because of the language barrier. And he persevered. So I have a lot of respect for him in that. But
Yeah, for
soccer
sure.
was always at the forefront of everything he did. He played pickup all the time. He watched games, and anytime I was around him, there was some sort of element of soccer involved. So I just, I was kind of naive as a kid thinking that everyone loved soccer and was obsessed as my family, taking out the VHSs and watching old World Cup games. And that just wasn't the case in Grand Forks, North Dakota.
Well, you and I are cut from the same cloth. Like my father immigrated from Germany, not to place kick, but he immigrated when he was a kid. But when I was growing up in the early 80s, we were like the only family that got soccer to watch on TV, because we had one of those old satellite dishes that was like the size of like a
Oh yeah.
like, I'm talking about like you could land a plane with this thing. It was so big. And like we would get like Bundesliga games, and I remember being like 7, 8, 9, around that age, and being outside with the door open, and my dad like telling me where to move to push the dish a certain way, because we were getting like a better reception from some weird feed. But yeah, we had, and when my parents recently downsized their house, but when they were moving out, we had boxes of old World Cup tapes, and I'm thinking like, how would we even watch this now?
Well, what would you even do with those?
We gave them to Goodwill.
That's awesome.
So some lucky like vintage, I don't know, collector has like every World Cup from '82 on VHS now. But it's a crazy story. Like it's super cool that with your father having the summers off, that you were able to kind of get outside of the States and continue to learn the game. So when did you know that coaching was going to be your vocation, and what drew you into it?
Yeah, so that was one of those things where I was young, and I had done really well at the prep level, and I had this illusion that I wanted to be a professional soccer player, right? So I took a really big chance, and I moved down to Ecuador. I didn't know any Spanish at the time, ironically, my dad being a Spanish teacher, but it was never, my mom doesn't speak any Spanish, so it was never really a skill set that I needed. And, I decided to go to Ecuador and take a chance on playing, and, had some amazing experiences there. And I was actually injured. I had torn my hamstring, and I had a long recovery time. And a coach I was playing for there said, "Hey, my brother is a principal at a public school, and they need help. The gym teacher needs help running some soccer stuff." So I popped in, and I'm on crutches, and I'm doing these soccer drills in Ecuador with my broken Spanish still. And I had this moment when I was having struggles recovering from injury, knowing that I probably wasn't cut out for that pathway as a player. Because, these kids, especially in South America, they're joining academies when they're U5. So by the time you get there, the gap is too big. And I had a lot of qualities as a player, but not to that level, because they just had a head start that, was insurmountable. So I had a moment where, I met with the doctor I had there, and he's like, "You're going to have, muscular issues if you continue to injure yourself playing at a high intensity." And I just kind of made the decision, okay, it's in my best interest long-term to stop playing. But you don't need to be in shape, and it's really more of a brain game as a coach, and I just fully committed to that. So in my early 20s, I was coaching in Ecuador, and I was coaching as much as I could. I did academy younger kids. I'd go to all the older trainings with the teams that I was working with. I did some player scouting of some of the players that I was friends with on the first team.
Wow.
And then the door got opened by my youth club in Grand Forks, and they said, "Hey, we want someone to come in and be a director of coaching for us." And I figured that was a way to expedite my growth as a coach, because I was behind a long line of ex-professional players that have been coaching for 25 years, because, Ecuador is a soccer crazed country. So I came back and I just blasted through my badges. I think I did my E license, my F license, or my E license, my D license, and my C license within 2.5 years through NYSA. And I kind of got to meet all the people here in the Twin Cities that are, make up the soccer community as it is today. And I couldn't have the career I wanted as a player. So I thought, okay, let me be the best coach that I can be. And I've been coaching full time basically ever since.
Nice. So do you have a particular style of play that you prefer as a coach? And of course, like, who are some of your mentors in the coaching ranks that you've looked to or look up to as you moved into this being your job, your full-time job?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think from a playing standpoint, I think it's really easy to say the idealistic of like the team that keeps the ball and moves the ball and plays beautiful, but still gets results. And, for anyone that watched Liverpool and Man City today, two different styles, but they're both tremendously competitive, right? But for me, I want to win. So I think having versatility in how you approach games is important, and flexibility to use sort of the tools you have at your disposal. And, you have to remember that I came from coaching in a community that wasn't as competitive, that had a lot less talent available. So figuring out how to be competitive and win games with less tools is kind of how I developed the style of, okay, we need to be versatile and use the tools we have to the best of the ability, prep for different opponents. But at the same time, as a player, I was an attacking minded player that liked to keep the ball and like to work hard and be tactical in the movements. And obviously I have a high level of technical skill. So yeah, ideally you're playing a beautiful version of soccer, but at the end of the day, it's about getting results. And if it has to be the nitty gritty, that's fine. But it has to be something that excites the players, and ultimately you want it to excite your supporters too. So
man, everyone's gonna love to hear this once it gets pushed out. We got a coach coming in, taking over the NPSL squad that likes to win. Of course, I mean that's yeah. It's what we've been doing lately in the NPSL North. So my last question before I let Nate jump in here. So you've have experience in both the women's side of the game as well as the men's side. So my father, he was a 16-year varsity girls high school coach when I was growing up, and I know his thoughts on it. But I'm interested in getting your take on the differences between the two games.
Well, I think there's kind of clear differences in terms of, a lot of coaches approach games and how to get a competitive advantage. So manipulating the situation, right? And listening to the last podcast on the People's Pitch, I think it was you, John, that made reference to the fact that Des Moines was playing super direct from the beginning of the game, which was kind of contrary to how they were warming up. They were doing a lot of combination and pinging the ball around. So I was really shocked to see that they went route one straight from the gate. And you just saw the fact that Jack was able to deal with that. On the female side of the game, aerial play hasn't been a huge emphasis, at least in my personal experience. So that's something that you can exploit, so there's lots of big balls in the box. There's lots of going over the top, relying on athleticism. And I think that over the years it's transformed. And now with, the success of the U.S. women's national team and the growth of NWSL, and WPSL is up to like 1 million teams now or whatever it is. The game is really, really competitive and allows a lot of opportunities for female athletes. And I think when I approach coaching men versus women, for me, it's like, you just kind of look at it like they're competitive soccer players. So that versatility in terms of your approach to get to maximize what you have at your disposal. In my case at Lakeville North, we don't recruit the players at Lakeville North like we would at Minneapolis City. So just using what we have to the best of our ability to get competitive success, but then also produce a product that we're proud of and that people are excited to watch is important. But I think the differences, as they were maybe in the last decade, are starting to become less, because I think the female side of the game is taking an approach that essentially is more attuned to what the men have done for a greater period of time. Even watching the female Barcelona team take on Real Madrid in the 90,000, packed stadium or whatever, the way that they play is very, very similar to how the men play, which is really, really cool to see.
Yeah, it was so funny you mentioned that about the Des Moines game. So like I was watching the same thing you were, and I was like, man, these guys are gonna like keep the ball and just like combine, and they're all like 6-7 feet tall. We're in trouble. And then I heard the coaching staff, and I was like, oh, they're British. They're probably gonna go back. and then 4 minutes into the game, like we're already on our 5th long ball over the top, and I was like, yep, that's it all makes sense now.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned the British piece, because I think culturally it influences a lot about how you play. And I had a love for soccer prior to going to South America, but after that, I fell in love in a different way. There's a lot of commentary about Ederson having the ball on the goal line, and how people were stressed out about that or what have you. But that's part of South American soccer. You keep the ball, center backs dribble out. And so for me, I'm really interested in that style of play and the idea of everyone needs to be technical. Everyone needs to know how to defend and attack. And, the ball is the most precious piece of it. So I'm really excited to be able to kind of impart my influences and the coaches and the friends and, people that have had an impact on how I view the game and my love for the game within City, and maybe give a different touch to how we look at different tactical situations and the use of the tremendously talented roster that we have.
So, Marco, you are not really a stranger to the NPSL. In fact, you know what it's like to be in the north, to be way north. You said you're from way up there, and you coached way up there. Tell us a little bit about your more recent coaching background in the NPSL North.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had made the move from Grand Forks, an hour south, to Fargo to take a full-time position at the largest youth soccer club in North Dakota. And they had an exciting project where, they had the group of guys and they wanted to kind of put something together. So Dakota Fusion, announced that it was going to start a team in 2016. And as I mentioned, this was in collaboration with the youth club that I was working with at the time, Tri-City Storm Soccer Club based out of Fargo. And we were having talks about, what do we want to do with the group? We thought we had a really talented core at the time of local guys.
Johnson.
Jay Johnson, the guy that ran a marathon before playing in a game.
That guy was special. He just had it. He had it off the field. Every time I met the guy, he was just like a really great person, and then on the field, like just bad goals.
Yeah, I absolutely right. He was an ace in front of goal, but we had what we thought was a big enough core, and then obviously with Sajid Gori coming in and providing the stability required to take on a venture like that, it was really exciting. And my dad took over as the head coach that first year, and I got to assist him. We weren't in the NPSL at that time, but we were certainly working towards that. And we ran the first tryout together. At the bubble, NDSU, bunch of guys showing up very similarly, to the style of the open trials for Minneapolis City. And we put our group together and we had our first summer season of exhibitions. And then, they just kind of took off from there. And I had an increased role within my youth organization job. So I stepped away from Dakota Fusion for a couple of seasons. And then I actually came back to help with the WPSL side. And I coached the WPSL women for a couple of seasons before making the move to the Twin Cities.
Nice. And what were the circumstances that led up to you accepting the job with Minneapolis City as the NPSL head coach?
Yeah, so that was really exciting. Obviously, anyone who's involved in the NPSL North has a lot of admiration for Minneapolis City. They've created a super amazing environment, super talented team, style of play. They kind of tick a lot of the boxes for what a person who loves the game wants to be involved with from a coaching perspective in this area of the world, right? So I had accepted a position to work with Salvo Soccer Club located out of Egan through some of the connections that I had. Peter Rivard, I actually met back in Grand Forks, North Dakota in my playing days, and he's been around the Twin Cities soccer community for a long time. And we had some discussions about how I could grow as a coach and be in a bigger market. So I made my way down in August, and I moved to St. Paul, and I had been working with the club. And, Peter had spoke with Adam Pribble and, just said, hey, you guys are looking for someone. I think we have someone that would be great to work with you. A young coach that's motivated, and he has more experience than most at his age. And then I had some great conversations with Pribble, and it was actually kind of funny because in my first conversations with both Pribble and with Matt VB, they both were pretty surprised how much I knew about the club. Because they're just like asking me basic questions like, what do you know about City and everything? And I'm talking about specific moments when Meteor did this or Lionel did that. And so it was kind of a good fit. Obviously, the ambition is to do really big things this summer with a giant group of guys in two leagues and the tournament competition. So they needed people that are about the soccer, and I think it was a perfect match in that sense.
So you talked about it briefly, but I want to go into it a little bit deeper. So I'm interested in knowing what your thoughts and perceptions, or even maybe like folks around the NPSL North outside of Minneapolis City as an organization. So what your perception was outside looking in, and then maybe how that aligned or maybe changed once you were brought into the engine room.
Sure. So I think when you're on the outside and you're competing against a major market like the Twin Cities from a smaller market in the NPSL North, you got to think about how can we compete, because the player pool here is so much more competitive locally than what it is, in, for example, Fargo, Moorhead, Duluth, what have you. So you start exploring, how do we raise the level of talent locally? Do we look to build rosters that, contain primarily international players like Duluth had success with and Med City has had success with in previous seasons. But really the biggest thing for me is, we talked about it a lot, was this idea of creating the support, seeing the social media presence and seeing how many people come out to games. And the atmosphere really lends itself to wanting serious soccer people, be it players, coaches, administrators, whoever, to gravitate towards Minneapolis City. And that for me was always really, really intriguing. So for me, when I wasn't a part of it, I was just thinking of ways that we could match it or exceed it, which seemed very, very challenging at the rate of growth that City was presenting itself. I was always asking myself, like, how do they get so many people to the stadium? Well, they play good soccer. How do they get these good soccer players? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was big for me. And then now being behind the scenes, it makes a lot of sense, because all of the sacrifices and the hard work I put in to make my little part of it work when I was in Fargo, imagine, having that same ambition, but having 10, 20, 30 people driving the ship. So it's been really, really impressive from what I've seen now, being on the back end of it. And I definitely feel at home here, because I want to go as far as I can in the game, which is what our players want. And, I'm willing to go above and beyond the call of duty, which is what the coaches and the administrators and volunteers in this club are all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking of of going above and beyond kind of what the players want, you're taking over as the head coach for a top 10 NPSL squad. I mean, I think it's safe to say, right? Top 10 in the country. But the talent pool is going to be stretched out across two clubs this year with really high expectations across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Is succeeding and continuing to carry the torch in the North Conference still a goal for this club?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's the identity that which, this club is built upon, right? So we're going to do the absolute best we can with whatever we have at our disposal. And because we've had recent success, even in the previous podcast, you're reading off the new additions to the team. These are serious soccer guys. These are guys that are competing at a national level, day in and day out with their collegiate environments, guys we have ex-professionals in the mix. So I think the ambition is always to compete at a top level. Although it's a unique format with how the team is structured this summer, the coaching staff works very closely to take important considerations into account. How do we organize both groups to be successful within USL2, NPSL? Obviously, the Futures program is flying at the moment, and we expect big things for them at the UPSL level. But just the fact that there are so many people working diligently to make sure it all kind of comes together, I've been able to accomplish some things with a lot less, a lot less talent, a lot less experience. So for me, on a personal level, and this definitely aligns with the club, the goal is always to go out and win the conference and position yourself to compete nationally once we get to the postseason.
This year, you started to talk about this year, that dynamic between the USL2 and the NPSL squads was going to be way different than last year's was between UPSL and NPSL. Is there going to be a definitive USL2 roster and a definitive NPSL roster? Are players going to cross over? How is the club going to decide who plays where on any given week?
Absolutely. So I think that's a tricky question, because I think if you look at the way that the schedule is set up, we have a lot of double headers. We have a lot of, obviously, weeks where we have upwards to 4 games. We have a lot of back-to-backs, things of that nature. So from a planning standpoint, it is a little bit tricky. But in the talks that I've had with the staff, Matt VB, Prunty, Tori, Adam, etc., we're looking at it for how can we be as competitive as possible on the day. If we play Twin Stars away May 7th, and then on the back of that, we host Des Moines Menace, how do we set our rosters so that we can compete in both of those matches? That requires a lot of planning, and it requires a high level of transparency with the athletes, because in my perspective, at the end of the day, the players want to play. And I think it would be better to have a player that can go and make a huge impact in the NPSL level, play 75 minutes, than have them maybe sit at a USL2 level. Sure. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of interaction amongst the group. And I think maybe some weeks you'll see the squad not change a lot. And then other weeks, especially when we approach postseason or we're working to solve problems, be it injury or what have you, that there is some interchanging of the players amongst the groups. And that's the approach that we've taken in training. And I think everyone understands that we are one collective team, and we're trying to win every game we play in, be it USL2, NPSL, or the Open Cup.
That's pretty ambitious for this new model. So that's awesome to hear. Really exciting it's going to be an exciting summer for sure, to kind of see how that plays out. Mm-hmm. Have you guys discussed at all how it might work when you have 2 teams that could be going in maybe different directions, or like you hinted at, a player that maybe needs a little bit more playing time and would be better served playing, against Dakota or against Duluth rather than sitting against Peoria?
Yeah, so I think the idea is obviously, we've assembled an amazing staff, and having Matt, Tori, and Prunty present, with the USL2 group regularly, and being able to assess and do the opposition analysis against those groups. And then having myself, Seb Dixon, and Derek Johnson regularly with the NPSL and my background knowledge of the league. I think, I honestly feel very privileged and honored that the club is entrusting me and my ambitions and my knowledge as a coach to guide and navigate the NPSL North on days that, frankly, the other staff members are, either playing a game or prepping for a game or what have you. Mm-hmm. And I've been very thankful for the relationship I've been able to develop with Matt VB in a short period of time. We think a lot in terms of the same in terms of how we approach the game, but also the type of people and leaders we want to be. So I think it should work out pretty well. And again, me just investing time and being prepared to allow the athletes the best platform to be successful. And I'm uniquely positioned to share with the athletes my trials and tribulations as a player and, help guide them on the pathway to being a professional, which I know a lot of our guys are super motivated to work that into their career pathway. So it's I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's a task that we're all up to, and we're going to certainly do everything we can to make the most of it.
So when you look at the makeup of kind of the different programming we have with, obviously the Futures is doing their own thing in the UPSL, but there might be, like we had last year with MC2, where some of those featured players may play their way into opportunities with your squad in the NPSL. As a coach, like, how are you going to handle kind of the two-pronged approach of, like, we talked about continuing the success at the NPSL level? Great things hearing like you're all about winning games. That's awesome. But also readying players to maybe get that USL2 call up, and then how to backfill that with anyone maybe from the UPSL squad.
Yeah, I mean, that's for me, what an awesome challenge it is to be placed in a conference with Des Moines, who set the standard at the USL2 level last year. So for me, if we approach, let's say we have a training session that's game day preparation with the NPSL squad or projected roster for a given week, to demand the standards necessary to compete with the Des Moines Menace, that puts you in a great position to compete with the members of the NPSL North. So honestly, having that carrot on the end of the stick, so to speak, and having been exposed to it through the US Open Cup, we have experiences that we can call upon now. And that's another big important piece to us qualifying for that tournament and competing in that arena is, you can go to someone like Loic and a Zach Susi and whoever else and say, yeah, this is what needs to happen if you're going to compete at USL2 level. And if we get guys pushing each other day in and day out to get to that top team, we are going to be a really formidable side at the NPSL North. So I'm excited about it, but again, the management piece is just transparency and letting them know, hey, it's better now than to be someone like me who thought I was better than I was and is staring down, these guys that have World Cup and national team experience and feeling like, what have I got myself into, So I'm really excited for it. It's a great group of guys. And yeah, all we can do is try, because we're venturing into uncharted waters, right?
That's such a great point that you made too, that really it's all about preparing for the highest level of competition that the team is going to face in any given week, and everything else will kind of fall out of it, right? If you can handle Des Moines, you'll be okay against Sioux Falls.
Oh, absolutely. And I think from a playing perspective, it's so motivating when you can go a step higher, right? So if you're a reserve player who's pushing for a chance to play in a top team in any classification of soccer, that's so motivating, knowing that you have a chance to essentially get promoted, right? Go up to a higher level or a perceived higher level and get a chance to play with more experienced players that can only prepare you for things better in the future. So yeah, I honestly think, in a weird way, despite the, maybe more players going in different directions, the fact that we can use that as a motivating factor of, movement between UPSL to NPSL to USL2 and beyond is really going to bring a high level of intensity in the day-to-day work with the team, which will hopefully, put us in a situation where guys want to perform at their best all the time. And that results in the team being great.
Absolutely.
Are there any players that, you've been watching, you've been listening to the podcast, you've been watching the team, you've done your homework over the last couple of years in this league. Are there players that you're excited for this summer that you're going to get a chance to coach?
I think for me, as an attacking minded player, I love looking at who we have in those positions. And maybe, it's a blessing as a curse when you can coach kind of your perspective in the position that you grew up playing, because maybe I can provide a lot of good insight, but maybe I'm overly critical at times. So I think it's safe to say I'm super excited to work with our attacking players and pass along the knowledge that I was given from great coaches and mentors and teammates that I had in my playing career, and just help them, maximize their potential in those positions. And at the same time, I also think it's you use your own life experiences as a coach to then, improve every area of the team as a whole. So being able to teach defenders how to read cues from attacking wide players, work with goalkeepers on, here's how they're going to get you to move. Here's how they're going to get you to adjust your feet. And just using everything you have in your locker as a coach to help increase the overall knowledge. At the end of the day, the guys will pick up on that, and they'll see how dedicated you are to your craft, and hopefully want to play hard for you. But yeah, I mean, seeing what Louis and Zach did in the U.S. Open Cup, I think it'd be foolish of any coach not to say, hey, I would love to just work with these guys and help them get to wherever they want to go.
Absolutely. Well, Marco, thank you so much for joining us and officially introducing yourself to the crazy murder circus that makes up our fan base. We're super happy to have you join the club. Like I said, you're all about winning. That's music to my ears. But we're really looking forward to getting the boys out on the field, not in the not too distant future here, banging in goals and hopefully lifting that NPSL North hardware for the 4th time. So we really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and thanks to everyone now and in the future that's supporting the group, and super excited to get out and get rolling.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, Marco.
All right, thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this week's show, and thank you again to our guest, Coach Marco Campoverde, and, of course, muchos gracias to our wonderful show sponsor, Football Stadium Prince.
What are we, football then?
Football stadiumprince.com. If you're in the market for some supremely curated soccer-focused graphic design on anything from mugs to t-shirts to prints, head over to footballstadiumprince.com and fill up your cart. John, I just picked up the Edor Nelson field print that showed up last week.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I'm going to add that to the soccer wall in my basement. That is also the back wall of the toddler's play kitchen. But I can still pretend that at least the wall is mine.
Well, no, it means that she just owns and operates a sports bar. I get it.
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing about Football Stadium Prince, they've also got this NFT game going, so you can get in on that if you follow them on Twitter. He's doing some really cool stuff. Really like what Steve really like what he's doing. Please support, and don't forget you can use the code CROWS10 for 10% off everything you purchase, of course, outside of the NFTs. I used CROWS10 and it worked. And remember, all U.S. orders ship right from the States. They come really quickly. Trust me. If you're like me and you got taken to the woodshed by a good old Uncle Sam this year,
man.
Remember that Minneapolis City is a 501c3. Consider beefing that tax deduction up for next year through a charitable gift right now to the club to keep this wonderful ship we have built afloat. If you're interested in getting a hold of us, we have made it super simple. You can get a hold of the club on Twitter at MPLSCitySC, or you can talk to us through the show at the People's Pitch on Twitter, or via email mcscpodcast@gmail.com. Do we have any questions? I thought you talked to Bryn and he had a question we should answer.
Oh yeah, but it was something we couldn't answer.
Oh,
so
secret.
Was,
yes, this is for secrets.
Yeah, he asked us for some insider info, and we couldn't do it. Bryn's always thinking one step ahead. He's always
Well, that's all for this week. I am Nate. Thank you so much again to Marco, and this has been John. It is, I guess, this is the official preseason. It's crazy now. The player announcements are coming in less than a month away, just a matter of weeks before opening day at the Nelly. I can barely hold my poop in. So we're going to be back weekly. You got to be sure to check out next week's show, and when we will be going after a couple players to try to bug them and get them on the show. Who knows? But until next time,
you got hooked.